Welcome to the TMRN Time Monk Radio Network. I'm Jules, and today is Saturday, the 4th of June 2011. Returning to the show is WebBot's inventor Clif from halfpasshuman.com. Clif, welcome back to the WebBot Forum Roundtable.
Thank you very much.
The WebBot Forum administrator is Fox, and today he will be doing the recording and technical support of the show. Several members of the forum were kind enough to join us tonight. They include moderator Lolly and members Gemini, Alton, Lua, Thorus, and Kay Sauber. For listeners, we assume you are familiar with Clif and his work. If not, please go to halfpasshuman.com and purchase his reports and listen to a host of free interviews with Clif on our YouTube channel, webbotforum.com. Clif, do you have the wife preoccupied, dogs locked up, and coffee ready to go, sir?
Well, sort of. In the reverse order, the coffee's good, the wife's going to hit her breakfast here in a minute or so, and she'll be occupied. And the dogs are asleep, so we're good for a while.
Fantastic. We've broken the interview up into two sections. In the first part, we'll be discussing WebBot forecasts. In the second half, we'll be discussing spirituality and life, hopefully. Without wasting any more time, pie up. Our first question comes from Kirk. Kirk.
Hi, Clif. Have you seen anything in your data since your last report that you'd like to share at this time?
Yes, I will. I covered a little bit of it with Mel in the interview yesterday. Two things have occurred. One at a macro level, at a meta-arts level, if you will. I've noticed a very large shift in a pattern. It almost slapped me in the face, and that was a huge amount of immediacy data. So much so that the amount of pre-filtering processing had to be greatly increased, threefold. This is curious because we've seen some small level of immediacy creep over time from 97 to now, but a sudden ballooning was totally unexpected, and it was somewhat obscuring. In other words, it was hard to get through all of it just to get at anything that was meaningful beyond the next couple of weeks. So that was interesting. And then within the data itself, prior to the report getting eaten by our computer issues here, I'd run across a cross-linked set, or a set of cross-links that all revolved around the descriptor shock within the markets. And this descriptor within itself had referential integrity and internal cross-links to all kinds of market problems. And the shock level itself, when it first manifest, because of the way that the structure of the linguistics reference themselves internally and sort of spiral down, we know that this is going to be a multiple process or multiple event process. And we think it'll start in this summer, probably relatively soon, probably very close to the solstice, continue across the summer, and then really impact in September, October. So it's as though let me put it this way, the emotional sums in the continuing release language that continues all the way till near the end of October, the emotional sums do not bottom out through this shock process until in September. So the process itself will have a tendency to accelerate the release since it's starting within the market's entity. I don't think it's going to be good kind of release language. I don't think it'll be a lot of people yelling, hooray, hooray, happy days are here again, or we have nothing to fear but fear itself, so let's get on, and all of that kind of thing. I think rather it'll be release language in the weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth style. So just sort of a heads up that it's going to be a very nasty summer economically, globally, for the whole pyramid scheme that is the dollar. That was another subset there that referenced how the dollar death will proceed now that we've, in essence, as a pyramid scheme, involved the whole planet, and therefore there's no one to sell our worthless paper to, and thus prop up the pyramid from below. So it's all going to sort of start crumbling down.
Wow.
Yeah, losing this report was not easy to take because of what we'd had to achieve first off with the ballooning of the immediacy data, which actually probably relates to the blank wall kind of an effect, at least in a couple of ways, in 2013. But also there were, I think, 9 out of 15 pages devoted to the shock and its impact through the global pop and the markets. Now, by the time I recreate the report, I'll be actually working on data that's forecasting from the end of July forward. So fundamentally, we're going to live through it. We won't have any kind of a real warning from it, which is why I bring it up now.
Well, I'm glad you did. I'd love to pursue this a little more, but I think that'll come in later. One of the forum members, JP, I should say, from Dataset Analysis 20, asked this, said the data sets are pointing to yet another instance of food crop poisoning tainting in May that will produce severe disease in a few months later in both consumers directly and market speculators indirectly. His question is concerning the new E. coli disease in Europe affecting vegetables. The strain is reported as being really nasty, resistant to all forms of antibiotics, and scientists have no clue as to where it came from. 2,000 people now infected in Germany with over a dozen dead. What are your thoughts on this stuff? How bad is it likely to get? Was this genetically modified by the local carrying powers that were?
It may indeed have been genetically modified in that there's some early suggestions that it's a spiral core bacterium, which is reasonably rare. That's a level of protection that the nucleus is usually seen in viruses and even hardened things like the biotin-covered spores from fungi and other such plants. So you don't usually see it in bacteria. Bacteria are more your Lebowski kind of critters out in the wild. They're just sort of cruising around and that sort of thing. The fact that it had the spiral also is why it's resistant to attempts to control it. So that's kind of an anomaly. Whether it was engineered that way or not, is speculation. So far we're running about 7.5% on the linguistics around the E. coli being going towards our food tainting in the large envelope that we had for summer. So if it progresses, we would expect that it would jump the continent and go to probably Africa first and then start being seen elsewhere. But that it's going to have to really impact the food supply to be the to reach the level of the forecast linguistics. Now, we could have forecast it too high, but it doesn't seem that way based on the kind of problems this E. coli is presenting, because not only do the people that don't die suffer a great deal in the process of not dying, it's unclear as to how much of a residual problem there will be for them. In other words, there's mortality and morbidity can take quite a while. Usually mortality is something seen in a relatively short order, right? This is how doctors think of it. And so morbidity is an over time kind of an issue. And we don't yet know how devastating the spiral bacteria will be to those people that survive it. So we have other examples of spiral parasitic activity on humans in nature. None of them are good. These include things like syphilis, and the residual effects of that are devastating even after you've killed the initial infection. So I'm not particularly sanguine about it. If it is the fulfillment of the language, then we'll see sort of a burst of it over perhaps the next 90 days. And we'll be able to tell just about the time that the economy and everything else is falling to bits, which actually may be sort of a saving grace. There's a whole series of anthropological articles about the idea that the degradation of the Roman Empire and other empires, especially the bridge builders, actually ended up being a good thing to limit the spread of disease, and this was proven up until the rebuilding of the bridges in the Middle Ages, which led to the Black Death. There hadn't been a major plague across the European area from the time that the Roman Empire collapsed and a lot of its bridges were burned, and thus isolating populations and so on and so on. So we may see that same net effect with a collapsing economy. It remains to be seen. But 7.5% or so is where we're at on the linguistics around that E. coli.
Okay. Do have a follow-up from forum member MKB. British scientists have found a new strain of MRSA superbug in milk from cows and swab samples from humans and say it cannot be detected with standard tests. Have you seen this? Have you seen any information on it? And are they somehow connected?
It's likely they're connected, whether they're both natural or only one of them is a natural occurrence. MRSA is a methicillin-resistant golden staph, basically, and it's a staph infection. That's actually an engineering byproduct. MRSA is an engineering byproduct of how we do things. So, for instance, you can eliminate MRSA in one of its centers of origins, which is to say a hospital, by going through the hospital and replacing every single piece of metal that people contact with their hands, such as doorknobs, with copper. And when they do contact the copper, they get a microcharge, and the bacteria is not transmitted. Copper itself is a poison to bacteria and doesn't hold it. Yet in our hospitals, we use this cheap product, which usually is a porous form of stainless steel with a cheap molybdenum component, and or aluminum, again a porous material that supports bacteria. So MRSA is not like this deadly plague from space. Staphylococcus aureus has been around for a long time, and staph is itself probably carried by everyone, but it is an engineering side effect that is promoting it to be such a problem in our current society. Because at the same time that we were building our healthcare system with all these aluminum and porous stainless steel handles everywhere, as well as other porous stainless steel surfaces, thinking that these were sterile, we were bringing in the heavy-duty antibiotics into the food supply, which promoted the resistant bacteria to begin with. Make sense?
Perfect sense. And I happen to agree completely with that.
Yeah, so get copper and you're good to go. I mean, you can actually eliminate that at home by changing surfaces around you to copper, and if you've got carpets, it works even better because you'll get a mild electric shock every time you open and close the door. And this will eliminate MRSA as an issue in your household.
Well, thank you very much for that, and all of your answers so far.
Clif, hi, this is Gemini.
Hello.
Hi, it's a pleasure to speak with you this evening, and I'm asking a question on behalf of forum member Green Meadow. The summer of hell originally sounded like it was a single summer. Now it seems like each summer is a pre-echo of the hell of the following summer. How do you see the summer of hell MAME? What's going on MAME-wise do you see escalating this summer?
I agree that's with that observation, and that was probably certainly was one of the forecasts I make, where we just assume it's a single event rather than us looking at the narrow end of a funnel, and that gets wider over time. But quite clearly, we're into one of those funnel instances, what we call wide memes. This one here, we're going to see the social degradation of Europe to the point where we may see the collapse of the euro. Now, bear in mind that all of the currency forecasters that suggest that when the euro goes, the dollar goes 3 to 4 weeks later are quite correct. The empires collapse from the outer fringes inward, and that's exactly what's happening to our empire. And under the circumstances, I suspect that we'll see within the central part of our empire here, the new Roman Empire, that is to say the continental United States, the beginning of the fracturing that is expected as the empire's basic currencies are debased. Now, our debasement within this country may be different than than how the dollar is debased in other countries.